Hey, everyone. Happy Monday to you. It is the day before the official election day, though many of you have already voted, I hope. So we're going to be talking about election security and more. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hey, everyone. Happy Monday. It's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong and Techstrong Gang here. It's going to be a crazy week, I got a feeling. Let me just caution you all. We are not going to know who won the presidential election Tuesday night. I don't care how late you stay up. It just doesn't work like that anymore in this country. So don't rush to judgment. Let the votes be counted. We're going to talk about the state of election security as well. But before I get into everything we're going to talk about, let me introduce our fine Monday morning Techstrong Gang lineup. We've got some of our prime gang, core gang members here. Let me introduce you. First of all, she is the CEO of Deploy Hub, sitting out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or near Albuquerque, New Mexico. One and only Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, how are you?
Hey, Alan, and yes, I think I'm just going to hang on this week and see what happens, because I want the results of Tuesday night.
We all do, but it just,
I can't help it.
I know.
I know.
So we'll all be up till 3 or 4 in the morning waiting for those polls in California to close. Like, we don't know how California is going to vote. But it is what it, this is. And with let's not make this too much election. Let me move along. Move along. These are not the droids or candidates you're looking for. Joining us from his boat, where he's, I guess you're still up in North Florida, if we could call it that, but making his way south, like any good bird does in the winter. Our friend Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Loving life, Alan.
Good for you.
Good to be back on the boat.
It is. It's good. Yeah, I took my boat out of where we had put it for the hurricanes. So it's sitting in my yard. Unfortunately, it's still, as you know, you're out here. It's really windy out. And you got small craft advisories all over the place. And it's supposed to rain this weekend. I don't know if I'll be out on the boat.
The weather. I got up at 2:30 this morning to sail just for that reason.
Yeah.
Hack everything.
You got to hack the weather. Well, things don't go good this week. I'm going on my boat. I might be heading to Havana. Who knows?
A more democratic state.
Anyway, moving along. Hola. Moving along. Let's go to Colorado, where we have the guitar master, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Hey, very good, excellent. By the way, this is a compliment, Chris. I think in another life, I could see Chris being Captain Blask, a pirate, going up and down the Gold Coast.
Cruising, looking for galleons.
Looking for galleons. Yes, not scallion.
Maybe. For all we know, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have a patch or anything on. I don't see a carrot on his shoulder.
Edward take control of a Swedish concrete pirate ship during a storm on the open sea. So I think I actually am literally a pirate by international law. But
there you go.
That's it.
Not allowed in some international waters. Okay.
All right. And then, still consoling, licking his feathers and wounds over his Yankees, our chief content officer, Mike Vizard. Mike, it's in the rearview mirror now. Let's worry about, concentrate on next year.
We are going to have an entirely different team next year. We'll see how it all plays out. But
you think so?
I think so.
What do you think the chances of Soto coming back are?
Slim than that.
Or you don't think they're going to open the bank for him?
I think somebody else is going to open the bank, and he's going to ask himself, does this organization have the will to win? And I don't know if I can answer that question.
Oh boy, this has hurt you hard. I can see this is a deep-seated wound there in the. They're the New York Yankees, 27-time world champion New York Yankees, Mike. Don't forget it.
I don't know. It might be time for a new manager. We'll see.
That I don't doubt. Anyway, let's move on from baseball. It is election season, football season. Let's move on.
Hockey season.
And it is hockey
it's
season.
It's also hockey season.
Yeah. Hey, what's the name of the Utah hockey team?
Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, the Utah Hockey Club. Who's the marketing person there? Did they
may change it to the Yetis. It might get changed to the Yetis.
To the Yetis?
Yes. I know. I put in so many suggestions.
They should be the Utes. Look at those two Utes.
You can't be the Utes because the college team is the Utes.
Yeah, the college team is the Utes.
Okay. Well, so much for that idea.
Yeah. Would you like to voir dire the witness, Mitchell?
Yes.
Voir dire.
Voir dire.
You said Callow? Anyway, all right, a little my cousin Vinny stuff going on. But let's move on. Our first block today is on the state of election security. How timely. Mike, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, the head of CIS has been out trying to convince everybody that these systems are indeed secure. And we also have a couple of articles about this up on Security Boulevard, so feel free to check that out. But this all became an issue in the last couple of elections because people were making allegations about voting machines and electronic voting. Chris, what is your sense of what's real here and what's not?
Well, remember that there's any method you use to hack a system. Hacking is about getting to some goal by a non-traditional means, right? So we tend to think, as computer people, about hacking computer systems. And to your point of your question, I think the electronic voting system, is extremely secure. Chris Krebs, is in the industry, well regarded across the board. I don't know anybody that has any question about Chris's integrity, and he was in this role in DHS in the last administration during the election. Did an enormous deep dive with good folks on the tech being used today. He gave it a relatively good bill of health, but that's just the tech, right? There are human systems all over this. The U.S. federal electric system is actually, for all its downsides, quite interesting and amazing. There are humans down to the county level, putting in their own methods to make sure that the vote is correct. And those thousands of people do good work, right? So I'm not very concerned at all about any substantial amount of election interference in that method. But at the same time, if you can get people to vote, you get people to believe, the sky is falling unless you, vote for me, that's a different kind of hacking. And as we all also know, the disinformation, misinformation, influence campaign is a nation-state weapon used at scale, not just by Russia, the classic supervillain in this case, but any competing nation states are doing these things to each other. So obviously China, Iran, and Russia and North Korea, and in that world we have folks who are perfectly happy to take some effort to make Americans believe that lizard aliens are coming to, sabot and purify our precious bodily fluids. I'm much more concerned about that as an influence than anybody actually logging in through a modem and changing votes on a machine.
By all means.
Young man in the front row.
I think this is an ironic topic for me today because I was just at a event yesterday. I was talking to somebody who worked for the New Mexico Secretary of State, and she was a bit offended by some of the discussion that's going on because they've worked so hard to implement so many security measures around voter registration, which is where the most, if there's going to be a breach, it's going to be a data breach. She talks about the level of pen testing that they do, the two-factor authentication, just all the cybersecurity measures that they've been required to pursue over the course of the last 4 years, and that still people believe, and this is true, I've heard it come from people's mouths at a bar that I like to go to, that they believe that voting machines can be hacked because they're plugged in, because they use electricity. So we have to keep that in mind.
So I want to go, and I'm going to take this over for a bit. I call bullshit on this whole thing, right? There's nothing the matter with any of our voting machines. And ask Fox, who paid out $987 million or some crazy number because they said so and they got caught lying. This whole thing is nothing more than a jacked up bullshit story created by Donald Trump and his minions, right? They want to sow discord. It's not a nation state thing, Chris. It's not China and Russia I worry about. It's the Republican Party that for the last 4 years has tried to put human people in on these voting commissions to sow doubt and sow discord and upset lawful elections. They tried it in Georgia, and thank God the court struck them down. They're trying it in every damn state. They've got the lawyers lined up. That's good. That'll be more lawyers who lose their law license for frivolous bullshit lawsuits. And it's time this country stands up and says, we're not going to take it. You want to win an election, you win a fucking election. You don't play the games they're playing here because this messes with our democracy. Right? This isn't about election integrity. This isn't about voting machines. This is about one side has a clear strategy of just undermining public confidence in the government so that it's okay then to go send a mob to attack the Capitol. And as an American, I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I say shoot them on sight. That's where I am.
Sociopolitically, I agree with you, right? I think that we have a major party, that's playing into this and is doing exactly what you said. However, right, we need to look at this in the grand context, right? This is really information warfare. And it's not the usual propaganda sort of thing. We have everything from Cambridge Analytica to today. We're in an interesting spot where nation states are. In St. Petersburg, there are, hundreds of people at least spending full-time jobs, sitting at computers, pretending to be Americans.
How many of them are being funded by Elon Musk's PAC, who is creating fake Kamala Harris groups on Facebook with misinformation, and they've traced it back to his PAC funding them? How many bullshit groups have been set up on X? Again, Elon Musk. You want to talk about, they talked about in the last election, social media had an undue influence against. Elon Musk has weaponized Twitter for whoever goes to that cesspool anyway, right? It's been weaponized. It needs to be shut down. Something needs to be done here. This isn't a Russia problem. It's not a China problem. It's not a North Korea problem. This problem is right here. The enemy is right here. You need to disassociate the politics from social media ownership because that's been weaponized. You want to talk about Zuckerberg or Apple? None of them have gone to the level of what we're seeing Musk do with Twitter and through his PAC. And if we don't take action against it, I fear for the future of our country.
Well, I think this is all driven by, and I've felt this way for a long time. I was in a different party years ago, but it's the signs of losing power, right? The Republicans have been losing power because they've been losing popularity in the general. Let me look at the general elections, right? What the numbers are. And that's why they've taken focus on the legislatures at the state level. They've focused on the Supreme Court. Now they're focusing on kind of the only way they can jack the presidential election and to sow discord. So it's a massive social engineering, misinformation campaign to take it over. Even the Washington Post, now the billionaires are subject to fear, right? Not wanting to take a stand of who they would back or supporting their people who are doing it. They get the hell out of the way. Let their people do it. And if they sign up for Trump, they sign up for Trump, or they sign up for Harris. Let them do it. I think it's all coming to a head of, we have to take back our democracy. If we really believe in the Constitution and the things that, are important to us in the flag and in our country and what we're proud about, these are people who are sowing discord, chaos. They're doing things that are not helpful to our society. And at some point, you have to just say that has to stop, or you go over here, you can keep doing that. But we're turning down the volume on your, if you're going to use social media to undermine the government, then we're taking it down. We have to do that, and it's more than just a free speech issue. It's an attack on our governments, and it's an attack on by people who are losing control and losing power. And this is their desperation. This is what they're willing to go to.
As a security person, right, you need to break this out, right? When you fight, stay as calm as the ocean, right? This is a very emotional topic for everybody involved on all the sides. I agree with you guys, and sociopolitically, I agree with everything you say. However, there's other Americans who feel very strongly that we're all wrong. So there's two things when you're being attacked, you're looking at your protective practices. One is, who is it? How do I deal with them? And the other one is, why are they successful? And that's where I'm coming from. And yes, nation states are investing billions and billions of dollars and have sophisticated structures to use this, for those normal geopolitical purposes, to distract, to erode, and again, in a conflict environment, I would do the same, frankly, right, within the bounds of how I would think I would win that conflict. So, while we here in America and around the world, this is not a U.S. problem. This same problem is happening in countries all over the world. There is a lack of trust. There's a lack of visibility. People don't believe anything. So, and when you don't believe anything, despotism is as good as anything else, right? So we need to break this out.
Chris, this is right out of Mein Kampf. If you get people not to believe in the institutions, right? If you can get them to doubt everything, then you can make them believe unrealistic ridiculousness. And that's exactly the playbook here. That's the playbook.
Absolutely. But
and
what's
so
different
what
about
happens?
Please, Tracy.
What happens too is once they believe that, right? Once they've they drank the Kool-Aid, their actions are coming from a place that they feel is good intent.
Right. Oh, yeah, they're right.
They really believe that the election was stolen. They really believe they need to do something about it. So it's hard then to dig out of that because it's hard to understand that you made a mistake. When when you're digging that deep, then you're trying to come from a place of good intent.
There is an amazing documentary on Fox. It's like The Brainwashing of My Father or something like that is the name of the show. It's a documentary, and it's really about the filmmaker's dad who basically drank the Fox News Kool-Aid and just went off the deep end, right?
Yeah, and thinking he was doing the right thing for his country.
He's a patriot. He's a patriot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then he winds up on a bus going to the Capitol.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Yeah, I read another story. It wasn't in the Times. Maybe it was the Post, one of them, about these Marines. The 3 Marines who participated in the January 6th thing walked into the Capitol and said, we didn't know what we were doing until the video came out of them carrying the flags and putting a Make America Great hat on some statue in the rotunda. And then they were upset that they didn't get any promotions in the Marines and they quit the Marines. Good riddance to them. You violated your oath, son. Get out.
So I generally agree on the conversation. However, I am not willing to sacrifice freedoms and rights that we are defending in order to silence somebody or to.
I'm not saying silence them.
We need to fight. We need to win this battle if it's going to be fought in the free marketplace of ideas. It just can't be something that we legislate and say this social media platform can't do this, and because then we're going up against freedom of speech and playing into their hands. And likewise, we have to be careful with the rhetoric and using terms that encourage violence among people who may be a little unhinged to begin with is probably not the way to go.
And don't underestimate the whisper campaign. The whisper campaign, it's amazing what sticky notes can do on a bathroom stall door.
Chris?
Well, again, the thing that's different about us, the 5 of us right here, as individuals and human beings and Americans, we can all have this conversation, but we're technology folks. And this is an issue being driven and fostered by the technology that we have built. Right. So I think, Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we need to, I think we win this, all of us, America wins this and the free world wins this, and the world wins this by doing what we're good at, being more transparent, more clear, more concise, and not, less obfuscated. And these are things that we as technology people can have a hand in. So I think there's no, we're not going to make a technology or any solution that, proves who's right. But I think we have such a lack of transparency, and that's the kind of thing that we as technology people could have a dent in to really change this issue.
Well, I don't really have an opinion on this subject.
But vote.
But I encourage you, if you
everybody,
haven't
yes.
voted yet, I encourage you all to go out and vote tomorrow.
And you don't have to tell anybody who you voted for.
Well, that's a whole nother thing, right? And it's going to be interesting. How many women don't tell their husbands who they voted for? And what a terrible indictment of where we are as a civilization and society, that in the year 2024, women have to be ashamed or kowtowed, right, that they're not voting for who their husband's voting for. Thank God my wife, that wouldn't fly at my house.
I'm not saying it's a large population, but I
think it is. It's bigger than you think.
No. Let me finish. But I think there's also some men out there who are not going to tell their friends who they actually voted for either.
Yeah.
There's that. There's the sort of the quiet part of it.
Well, look, I don't like to publicly say which side I'm on. So
it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I don't think gender, if I look at the election results, has had any significant impact on the voting patterns, because white women voted for Trump in both elections last time by a majority.
No. So that's race, not gender.
Well,
gender has had a significant impact. Joe Biden won women vote significantly over Trump, and Trump wins a male vote. Yes, we want to go white, black. It's a different story.
Seem to have the same issues that men do in terms of how they're splitting their vote. What I'm saying.
I beg to differ.
They have Roe versus Wade now.
I think in this election, you're going to see one candidate win the female vote from anywhere from 12 to 28%. And when females represent 53 to 54% of the voting electorate, of the voting public, this is an arithmetic issue. I don't care what they say about voting machines.
We'll be having a show on data analytics and elections on Wednesday, apparently. So, okay.
Well, I say let's settle this at the ballot box, in the courts where it needs to be settled, and in the the realm of
but even in the courts, look, that was the strategy in 2020. They brought, 63 lawsuits or 64 lawsuits. You want to talk about the Yankees need a new manager? They were 0 for 64. All they do is clog up the courts. And also don't forget, you now have a lot more justices that our friend Mitch McConnell put in, who knows where where their allegiance is and how competent they are. So, I don't want to go all Al Pacino on you, but you're out of order. The whole system's out of order.
Say hello to my little friend.
No. Justice for all, and justice for all. We're not bringing out the guns. Anyway, let's take a break here. We're going to bring it on down a notch. We're going to come back and talk about cyber resilience. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Accelerate your DevOps journey at DevOps Experience 2024. Join us for an exhilarating experience that will transform your DevOps practices. Explore emerging trends in DevOps and advanced platform engineering techniques. Learn how to integrate security while leveraging AI to drive efficiency and innovation. Mark your calendars for October 16th, 2024. Discover how to improve operational velocity and foster a culture of continuous improvement. Ready to elevate your DevOps strategy? See you there at DevOps Experience 2024.
All right, folks, we're back. And as promised, we're going to dial it down a little bit after throwing some red meat out there for Alan to chew on. But we're going to talk about cyber resiliency. And PwC has a survey out talking about how, well, a lot of folks don't seem to have this whole idea mastered. And the question I would throw over to Mitch is, are we thinking about the wrong things altogether when it comes to cybersecurity, and we're not thinking about how to make our organizations more resilient to it at all, and we're just obsessed with maybe thwarting the attacks, but the attacks are inevitable, so maybe we should rethink our entire approach here. What do you say?
Well, it's interesting. It's a very large survey. It's over 4,000 people that they surveyed. I don't know exactly the breakdown, but it's the difference of looking at, are we doing kind of basic blocking and tackling? Are we backing systems up, et cetera? But the other half of it is, can you actually recover from something? And I think what complexifies it in this situation is, with ransomware and things like that, attackers go after data and they go after the backups of that. And that's a lot of the cyber resilience of, it doesn't matter if you've got a good backup, but it's been corrupted. It was good until it was corrupted. And that's what they hold, right? And that's what they try to get to. So I think the issue here is more, you have to practice what you put in place. You have to make sure that you've gamed out and you do actual tabletop exercises, just like we would a security incident process, right? Incident response process. So can you actually recover if you had a cyber incident? And that's something I think it'd be really fascinating to survey, because I think that's where you'd see the massive gap, is whether you have the tools in place and they're being used is half, maybe a quarter of the question. 3/4 of it is actually, would they be effective under those stressful situations? And can you and your people and the processes you have go through that without kind of making snap decisions and filling in the gaps because you hadn't thought it through?
Chris, there's an implicit thought in this survey that says maybe we should be spending a little bit less on cybersecurity and more on cyber resiliency, and reallocating our budget spending to the things that make the IT environment more robust and less likely to be breached in the first place, or at least recover from a breach. And maybe, we've kind of overfunded what some people now refer to as the cybersecurity industrial complex.
I would be fine with that, right? For the last 30 years, I have really, really enjoyed working with operational technology, industrial systems, right, for all sorts of reasons. And, each sector, the electric sector, transportation, maritime, and so forth, different use cases and criticality, resilience, right? How important is it to make sure this doesn't break? And you compare that to IT, and it's just not the same game at all. Right. IT breaks all the bloody time and we just rebuild it over the weekend. And, which is just a bunch of cliche stuff to say. But I think at this point, there are, very, very large organizations who have taken, again, resiliency and safety are better words than security in the first place, very seriously, and done a very good job with it. There are also very few of them. Most organizations, have been nagged at by security people about doing things that they're probably not going to do, or that, may or may not be effective in actually getting some level of resilience that it's appropriate to them. So if you want to reallocate the budget, call it actual business continuity instead of security, where you need to encrypt something or put some security practices in place, that will show itself anyways.
So I think there's been a tension in security now for at least 8 to 10 years of, how do we allocate budget from prevention to response? You didn't hear the word resiliency as much. It was prevention versus response. And at one point, I bet you it was 95% prevention and 5% response. But over time, that pendulum has swung. And I think overall, from a cybersecurity budget point of view, we do put more resources into response, certainly, than we used to. And it's come at the expense of what we put into prevention. Or budgets have gone up, so both sides had more. But the last couple of years, this term resiliency has snuck in. But I put forth the proposition that resiliency is not response. It's not synonymous, right? Response is very clearly, I've had an incident, and this is how I'm going to respond. I'm going to have crisis management. I'm going to have backups. This is how we're going to implement these, this playbook, if you will, my response playbook. Resiliency is something else. Resiliency is designing my systems from the ground up to be resilient, it's an acknowledgement that we're going to have incidents, but I'm going to try to build a system that, an incident will not be fatal, that we can minimize the damage of an incident. And that is resiliency. And so I think it's important that we distinguish between resiliency and response. And the same way we went through this reallocation of budgets over the last however many years between response and prevention, we now need to put in a line item there for resiliency, not response, and make sure that that's getting the attention it deserves.
I'm not sure it's a line item. I think that part of the issue here is that it's really the responsibility of the IT organization to build a resilient environment. And it's just a matter of focus. And there's always been this disconnect between the IT folks and the cybersecurity folks, especially around things like backup and recovery, right? IT ops runs backup and recovery, and they do that mainly from a compliance mindset rather than a security mindset. And I think that we need to just go back into the IT teams and say, look, the way you design an IT system, you have to put the security aspect of this thing in a much higher level of agenda and a much more forethought into the possibilities, because I'm not sure that throwing more money at all of this is going to make an ounce of difference if we don't have the right architecture in place in the first place.
Well, part of the problem is that security is like let's think about a balloon. You squeeze one in and the air goes one side, and you squeeze the other in, the other goes the other side. Cybersecurity is so broad that we, for quite some time, we've been focused on the production side, on penetration testing, and trying to, block intruders. And we've put money there. Then we run over and we talk about, supply chain issues, and then we try to put money there. But I think, as this discussion is pointing out, it's not always the resiliency comes from a broader plan. And nobody has taken management of that broader plan. The security teams put responsibilities on developers to do things that they don't necessarily have the budget to do or time to do. And then, but they say, well, we're good on the operations side. We've put all that together. Why are you guys not, catching up? So it's when I talk to companies, it feels like they squeeze the balloon. They've got all of these resources going to one side, and then they look at the other side and say, we're not doing anything there. Maybe whack-a-mole is a better description of the game we're playing. But I do know that most companies that we speak to don't have a broad understanding of all of the defenses that they need to have a resilient cybersecurity plan. They only see, it's like the story of the elephant and the blind guys, right? They're all touching an elephant, but they're describing different things. So there are so many ways that we have been, that security is an issue, that it's hard to be good at all of them. And some companies are really good in one area, and others are good in other areas, but we don't have a good full offensive system. And everything that we do is defensive.
I love that visual, by the way. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Let's keep in mind that resilience is expensive, right? I built 2 boats with 4 power systems. As you guys know, just went through a hurricane, had some damage, came back all up. Resilience is really, really easy. Build 2, right? But if you say, I'm going to have 2 IT systems, I'm going to have a backup IT system, and just buy 2 of everything, build 2 of everything. That's twice the cost. Unless all your competitors are doing the same, you're not getting there. What I like about this way of thinking, though, is it forces executives, leaderships to say, all right, what is our risk? Our risk is we can't be offline for 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 months, whatever it is. That would cost us X. The cost of a level of resilience that lowers that, is Y. So you need to go through the process, or as an
But
organization.
you have to talk in those numbers, Chris. You got to talk business. You can't talk, our risk is, we have 7,564 known vulnerabilities we got to patch out there, right? That's not going to, at the board level, that's not the language they speak.
But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. A sieve is not resilient against leaks. And we're making the same mistakes that we made in security 20 years ago, Alan. 20 years ago, firewall, check. Intrusion prevention, check. Check. Whatever the security appliance of the day was that we needed, we put all those in there and believe that we've got a secure enough fortress to keep people out. Well, it turns out there's a lot of other ways to get in, right? It's not really secure. It has enough security that we think it's secure. And not that I'm going to label it this for the software world, but the thing about zero trust is it's changed the paradigm, which now we have to do something where we don't trust anything because we know an attack can come from any device, any person, anywhere in the system. That's how you build in resilience. Okay, you build in resilience. We have to be able to withstand not only the expected, but the unexpected.
But how do you know the unexpected is
you don't
by definition?
You don't, but you have to have systems that degrade, not fall down, right? And you can't prevent everything, but you can design systems that can take a hit but keep on standing, right? And I think, to me, the big fallacy in our security when we say software supply chain, DevSecOps, shift left, AppSec, any of those terms, is they're point solutions. Shift left. Oh my God, that's as point as a solution as it gets. Does it help? Yeah. Is it a good thing to do? Yes. But that, we know from the security world, it's the one place that you can get in that matters, right? And if you leave things open, people can get in. So if you don't have a holistic approach to security, and I think that's what we lack in our software approach to software security right now, period.
So I would say it's not just software, it's the whole system, it's the whole IT. It's not often I give Mike Vizard credit. Try not to.
Well, then why start now?
Well, yeah, exactly. But what he said was there was some truth there to what he said. Because here's another way of looking at this. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we call this cyber resilience. I think it's just resilience. I don't think it's necessarily a security, or certainly not a security only issue. I don't even know if it's a security issue. The same way we build a data center down here in Florida to be hurricane proof, right? And it's not just having good backup and recovery. It's making sure your windows are storm resistant, and the doors are, and you have a backup generator, and you have, you don't have shingles on the roof that are going to get blown away. You build a hurricane-proof data center, same way our houses are down here are. That's resilience. It's systems design. Chris, I know you...
process. The Ukrainian grid 10 years ago, when Russia hacked the Ukrainian grid and brought it down, turned out that folks knew where the switches were and you turn it back on, right? So it's hard to say, we can build you a truly resilient X, whatever it is, but you're talking multiple power grids, different parts of the world, and. Resilience is much more pragmatically achieved with business process. Again, who am I? I'm an electric grid, or I'm a financial services agency, or whatever. What is it I do? What happens if X, it all goes down? Maybe phone calls work. Maybe flipping the switches work, right? But it's who you are, what you're trying to achieve. And to your point, Mitch, yeah, I mean, I said a second ago, two everything, that's not really resilient. You're right. Now I have two things that fail the same way. Great. But quite often it's, again, knowing who you are and how you do things and putting in an alternative way to do that should bad things happen.
Hey, we got to move along here because we're going to be short on time and we still got one more block to go. We're going to come back and talk about API security. I have a unorthodox view on this, but stay tuned. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation, we're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, and we're back with our final block, and we're talking about API security because Traceable AI has the interesting survey talking about how, well, we're not very good at it, basically. A lot of folks don't have a lot of confidence in their API security, and we're not even sure who's in charge of API security, to be frank. So, Tracy, let's start with you. But, when I look around, we are more dependent upon APIs than ever. It drives our economy, and yet the more I look into this, the less secure those endpoints are than just about anything else we have. So, do we have a problem here, and what do we do about it?
We do have a problem, but there are solutions to the problem. It's a matter of accountability and who is responsible for implementing. And, this is a problem because we're talking about, communication between these different applications and services, which is sort of the core of our software. When you look at API security and you look at what can be done about it, there is money that has to be spent on it. There is training that has to be spent on it. But at minimum, folks, we should be looking at API gateways. And I'm always very surprised by how few companies use an API gateway. And API gateways have been out there for some time. Some are better than others that help secure these endpoints. So let's get started there. The other discussion that we have to have in this area is the role of CISO offices in helping and improving API security. This goes to, I talk about this so often, and I see it in so many different levels. I always say this, the Continuous Delivery Foundation doesn't have a lot of conversations with the OpenSSF Foundation. The CISO office doesn't necessarily talk to the DevOps community, and the DevOps community may not be talking to the developers. So developers are doing what they can. They have a lot on their plate. I sympathize with their position because they're not only trying to get code out and keep the company effective and agile, they are having to deal with learning AI, and they're having to secure their code, and they're having to push all of these services out as quickly as possible. Who is really responsible for making sure that API security processes and procedures and tools are in place? I don't necessarily believe it is the role of the developer. Now, we're starting to go to turn into having discussions around platform engineering. Is it the role of platform engineering now to start looking at how to implement better tooling and better practices and better scans and better approvals around APIs? I don't know where the answer is, but I do know that it's a constant problem. And part of it is we don't necessarily talk to each other, and there's no clear measures of who's accountable for taking care of the business of API security. The tools are out there. We can do it. We just have to put time and budgets in place to take care of it. And I think that the more people understand that, encryption and data threats come from APIs, I believe the more they'll understand why we need to pursue better practices around APIs. We started this by talking about, election security. And I really believe that where there could be issues is in voter registration, because that's the data and that's what can be impacted. So when we think about the data, I believe that we will become more interested in worrying about API security because it is primarily communication to our data. So a discussion has to be had, and we have to pull together in so many ways to address these security issues, particularly around API, even just down to API, documentation and governance. Because that oftentimes is not done.
I did. Thank you for calling on me, sir. So to me, the argument that API security is not part of the CISO's responsibility is like saying whoever's in charge of physical security doesn't worry about the windows. I only do the doors. The windows are in your offices. You guys take care of windows. I don't put any security systems on that. That's ridiculous. The APIs, data, where it's located, encryption of data and all that information, it's part of your security plan, part of your security strategy. You may not be the one to implement, but you can't write it off as not as important. Maybe you have a partner who isn't really a partner over in the CIO or the CTO that doesn't give a crap about security, and you can't come to an agreement on a strategy that's going to work. Okay, well, then you got a leadership problem. You need the leaders have to be bought into security is important. But whether it's not the job of the CISO to know how to do everything, how to build software and how to make it secure. That's the job of the CISO, is to work with the organizations that are building those applications, including the end user community who are doing their own thing, right, outside of IT, to make sure we're protecting our systems, our data. Because who else is it going to roll up to? If not the CISO, I don't know who's going to answer for it.
They always push it back to the API, the teams themselves to secure their software, though. That's where the accountability falls.
Yeah, they
don't necessarily have a budget for it.
Well, and then that's the issue. The issue is, how do we secure our APIs? And you've got to enlist the security organization to say, we need to allocate more money to that part of our security strategy, right?
So
that's my opinion.
I have an opinion on this. So I will tell you that, in my opinion, the biggest nothing burger in security over the last 4 years has been API security. Yes, a majority of traffic on the internet is API to API. Not only external, like Mike's API to Alan's API, but when we talk about multi-threaded applications, right? When we do container to container API communication, if you will, right? That I call it internal API traffic. It's huge and growing very quickly. However, people vote in many ways. People vote with their wallets. Mike, don't worry, I'm not going back to Blockhorn. People vote with their wallets. People vote with their eyes, ears, and fingers. But they make their preference known. API security, people have voted. It's impossible to get people. I've never seen something turn from a product to a feature so quickly. Right? Every API security company out there, and there were several that were unicorns at one point, have either been acquired, and not for great multiples. It kind of violated my rule of being the top three. It's not my rule, the Brad Feld rule of being in the top three. You look at, and I'm going to name names. No Name Security was a unicorn. They were the industry darling for API security. How come I picked them up relatively cheap? Really cheap. Our friend Michelle McLean was at one bench. And they got bought by Red Hat. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. You've got our friends at Traceable here who have gone through their own recent turmoil and turnover. I think the market has said API security, the WAF doesn't work for it. We've got these other things, web app, API kind of security measures. I don't know it's whether because they don't really work or people just don't really see the threat, and we haven't had a serious enough API attack where it hits them in the wallet, or it's just too damn hard. But certainly the industry has said this is a nothing burger.
I think the jury's still out. And I think, to your point, a lot of folks think the WAF is sufficient, but they don't realize the degree to which data is being exfiltrated or the business logic itself is being manipulated. So it's not really about the underlying firewall. It's an issue that sits above that firewall. And I think a lot of the times when we investigate these cybersecurity incidents, we don't go deep enough to figure out what the root cause was. So we don't realize that it's really an API issue. So I think that this is all going to come around again as a bigger conversation. But right now, in 2023, 2024, I'm going to agree with you, but I'm betting on 2025.
Stop
this
the presses. Say that again, Mike.
Which one? The one where I agree with you in 2023, 2024? Yes. What I'm saying in 2025, this conversation is going to come back, but I don't know if the existing platforms are the right answer because they are more cumbersome and add another layer that needs to get managed. And I think people are a little resistant to that. But I do believe that in 2025, we'll be talking about this.
Okay.
Well, I want to point out that there's some really good open source API security tools out there. And if you leave it up to the development team to solve these problems, they're going to reach to what's free because, as I pointed out, they often don't have security budget. They want to spend their money on other things. So maybe that's part of the problem. I mean, both Kong and Postman have open source tools, and that's kind of how they started pushing their business. So OWASP is out there. They're good tools.
I've spoken to several marketing chiefs at these API security companies over the last couple of years. And clearly their research and their experience is, Tracy, that the developer is not their customer. Their customer is the tried and true security guy, the CISO, and that typical sort of security sale. They thought it might be the DevOps team. They thought it might be the developer. But they wound up not making their numbers and pivoted to selling to the security team. And this is, again, I think, part of the people voting with their wallets on this issue. And maybe Mike is right. If he said I'm right, I got to tell him he's right too. But
part of the problem just comes back to who's in charge of security, right?
Maybe it's too early. Look, I've been in security a long time. Until you have a Pearl Harbor, it's hard to get the nation ready for war. And we haven't had an API security Pearl Harbor that we know of yet.
I think we had one. We just don't know about it.
Could be. Could be. Anyway, guys, what a great show for the day before Election Day. I hope we've got your juices flowing. You're ready to run out there and vote no matter what it takes. Don't be intimidated. You don't have to wear your buttons or hats. Actually, you're not supposed to wear your buttons and hats when you go vote. But do go vote, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow, probably encouraging you to vote again. And
vote with your clicks by coming back.
Wait. I just want to say I'm going to personally endorse API security. Vote for API security.
Backing another winner, Mike. Good for you. Yankees, API security. What's next? Getzel. Anyway.
It's coming back. It's coming back. Man.
We've got a full day of Techstrong TV following today's gang show. So make sure to stay tuned for that. We got some great podcasts and interviews and sessions from events. There's a lot of good Techstrong TV content out there. Check that out. But until tomorrow, Tracy, Mitchell, Chris, and even you, Mike, thanks for being here with us. I hope you've enjoyed this version of this edition of Techstrong Gang. We'll see you all tomorrow. Good luck, everyone.